they're not Chinese. Party na siya ng US. Magpakasyon ka na daw, sabi niya. Pocket money daw. Oh, yeah.
Dito na lang siya.
Yes, daw. Pocket money with
small ones eh. AMLA, GAB, FDC, Film Development Council. Parang wala naman yata magtatanong dyan.
Oo nga. Oo nga. Pero kung nandyan yung mga agency, saka wala magtatanong, we then dispose. Para sayang oras eh. Session is resumed. Majority Leader, we have additional reference of business.
Yes, I move to proceed for the additional reference of business, Mr. President.
The Secretary will proceed with the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it passed the following House bills in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate. House number 8677 entitled, An Act Increasing the Excise Tax Rate on Tobacco Products, amending for the purpose Section 145 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended by Republic Act number 10963.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
House number 6425 entitled, An Act Prescribing an Urgent, Comprehensive, and Integrated Land-Based Traffic Management to effectively address the traffic congestion crisis in Metro Manila, Metropolitan Cebu, and Metropolitan Davao, and appropriating funds therefore.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services, Local Government, and Finance.
House number 8618 entitled, An Act Amending Sections 141, 142, and 143 of Republic Act number 8424 as amended, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
House number 8645 entitled, An Act Amending Sections 22, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30, 32, 34, 37, 38, 39, 42, 51, 52, 54, 56, 57, 73, 108, 121, 122, 123, 174, 176, 179, 181, 182, 183, 184, 185, 186, 187, 188, 189, 190, 191, 194, 195, 196, 197, 198, and 199, and repealing sections 127, 175, 177, 178, 180, 192, and 193, all under Republic Act number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, and for other purposes.
Referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
House number 8637 entitled, An Act Creating the Regional Investment and Infrastructure Coordinating Hub of Central Luzon and providing funds therefore.
To the Committee on Rules.
House number 8636 entitled, An Act Institutionalizing a National Integrated Cancer Control Program and appropriating funds therefore.
To the Committee on Rules.
House number 8649 entitled, An Act Renaming Clark International Airport located in Angeles City, Province of Pampanga as Diosdado Macapagal International Airport.
To the Committee on Public Services.
House number 8629 entitled, An Act Institutionalizing an Energy Efficient and Conservation Program.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
House number 7206 entitled, An Act Granting Philippine Citizenship to Muhammad Wasim Naa.
Referred to the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
And House number 8394 entitled, An Act Providing for the Full and Effective Implementation and Enforcement of International Maritime Instruments of which the Philippines is a state party.
Referred to the Committees on Public Services and Foreign Relations.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it designated Representatives Alvarez, Tugna, Tejada, Pimentel, and Garbin Jr. as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing votes of the following House bills. House number 6169 entitled, An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the Franchise Granted to Philippine Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act number 7962 entitled, An Act Granting the Philippine Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations within the Philippines and for other purposes. And House number 6170 entitled, An Act Extending for Another 25 Years the Franchise Granted to RMC Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act number 8159 entitled, An Act Granting the DXRA RMC Rizal Memorial Colleges Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, establish, operate, and maintain a commercial radio broadcasting station in the Philippines and for other purposes. House number 6315 entitled, An Act Granting the Volunteer Life Care Ministries, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain non-commercial radio broadcasting stations in the Philippines. House number 6316 entitled, An Act Granting the Northeastern Broadcasting Services, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain a radio and television broadcasting stations in the Isabela Province and Region 2. House number 6431 entitled, An Act Granting Bohol Chronicle Radio Corporation a franchise to construct, install, establish, operate, and maintain radio broadcasting stations in the province of Bohol. House number 6707 entitled, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Raven Broadcasting Corporation under Republic Act Number 8084 entitled, an act granting Raven Broadcasting Corporation a franchise to construct, maintain, and operate radio and television broadcasting stations within Luzon and other areas in the Philippines where frequencies and/or channels are still available for radio and television broadcasting. House Number 6708 entitled, an act extending for another 25 years the franchise granted to Advanced Media Broadcasting System, Inc. under Republic Act Number 8061 entitled, an act granting the Advanced Media Broadcasting System, Inc. a franchise to construct, install, operate, and maintain radio and television broadcasting stations in the Philippines, and House Number 8302 entitled, an act granting More Electric and Power Corporation a franchise to establish, operate, and maintain for commercial purposes and in the public interest a distribution system for the conveyance of electric power to the end users in the city of Iloilo, province of Iloilo.
All referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it designated Representatives Deloso, Montalla, Zarate, Labad-Labad, Relampagos, and Lagman as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions on House Joint Resolution Number 26 entitled, Joint Resolution Extending the Period of Availability of Funds Intended for Victims of Human Rights Violations during the Marcos regime until December 31, 2019, authorizing the Bureau of Treasury and the Land Bank of the Philippines to release the funds and ensure the payment of claims, and the Commission on Human Rights to administer the effective distribution of the funds to qualified victims or their heirs or representatives as provided under Republic Act Number 10368, otherwise known as the Human Rights Victims Reparation and Recognition Act of 2013, as amended by Republic Act Number 10766, and Senate Joint Resolution Number 13 entitled, Joint Resolution Extending the Maintenance, Availability, and Release of the Funds created pursuant to Republic Act Number 10368, as amended by Republic Act Number 10766, specifically such funds in the Land Bank of the Philippines until December 2019 to ensure payment of qualified human rights violations victims, and authorizing the Commission on Human Rights to administer the effective distribution thereof.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it designated Representatives Sarmiento, Acop, Biazon, Hernandez, Umali, Robes, Yap, and Paduano as conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of House Number 8419 entitled, an act preventing the use of motorcycles in the commission of crimes through bigger number plates and identification marks, and Senate Number 1397 entitled, an act preventing and penalizing the use of motorcycles in the commission of crimes through readable plate numbers and identification marks and for other purposes.
To the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it designated Representatives Belaro Jr., former Representative De Vera as conferee to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions on House Number 684 entitled, an act amending Republic Act Number 53 as amended, otherwise known as an act to exempt the publisher, editor, or reporter of any publication from revealing the source of published news or information obtained in confidence by including within its coverage journalists from broadcast and news agencies, and Senate Number 1255 entitled, an act expanding the coverage of exemptions from revealing the source of published news or information obtained in confidence by including journalists from broadcast, news agencies, and internet publications, amending for the purpose Section 1 of Republic Act Number 53 as amended by Republic Act Number 1477.
Referred to the Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 3 December 2018, it concurred with the Senate amendments to House Number 6331 entitled, an act providing for the reapportionment of the province of Southern Leyte into 2 legislative districts.
To the Archives. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the permission of the body, I move that we proceed to the Senate President's designation of the conferees on the part of the Senate to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill number 1898, entitled an act amending, I believe, an act, and House Bill number 8628. This is an act transferring the PNPA and NPTI from the Philippine Public Safety College to the PNP, amending purpose sections 24, 35, 66, and 67 of Republic Act 6975.
The following members are hereby designated as conferees on the part of the Senate in the Bicameral Conference Committee on the disagreeing provisions of the mentioned or enumerated bills by the Majority Leader. They are Senator Lacson as chairperson and members Honasan, Villanueva, Gatchalian, and Hontiveros on the part of the minority. The majority leader? If the environment lady is ready?
We continue with the general principles, okay?
Agree.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, before we go back to or resume consideration of the budget, I'd just like to put on record, we'd like to congratulate the UAAP champions last night, Ateneo University. Although I'm from UP and many of us here from UP and we watched intently, truly Ateneo was a better squad yesterday. But we'd like to also congratulate, nevertheless, the runner-ups, the University of the Philippines Maroons basketball team, for a job well done. Thank you for the happiness that they gave us and the hope. I mean, the last time I saw a championship of UP, I was in my first year college, Mr. President, not to give away my age, that was 32 years ago. And so you can imagine the excitement that we felt this last few months with them, with the winning streak, bringing them towards the finals of the UAAP. So we congratulate both teams. And I hope that next year our UP squad will be a better squad. We have 2 new players coming in by the name of Kobe Paz and Richie Vivero. So hopefully we'll be able to have a better showing. But nevertheless, again, we'd like to congratulate both teams, and particularly the champion Ateneo, for winning the championship. We'd like to recognize Senator Risa Ontiveros.
Senator Hontiveros is recognized.
Salamat po, Mr. President. The Ateneo Blue Eagles gratefully accept the kind words of the UP Fighting Maroons. Mabuhay po kayo and see you next year.
Well, in this chamber, Mr. President, we have secretaries from both opposing camps yesterday. We have Secretary Sunny Dominguez representing the Ateneo Blue Eagles. But I think the most important person is Secretary Jokno, who represents UP Maroons. And of course, Secretary Pernia. So in the cabinet of the finance advisors of the president, the financial advisors, we win 2 against 1. But with that, Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of House Bill number 8169 under Committee Report number 538. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Under the agenda this morning, we'll just continue the interpellations of the general principles, and we'd like to recognize the sponsor, the distinguished senator from Antique and the Republic of the Philippines, Senator Lauren Legarda, to sponsor the measure and to once again interpellate. Lauren, who's going to interpellate?
Ping.
Senator Ping Lacson, Mr. President.
All right, the distinguished lady from Antique, the godmother of Luntian, Filipinas, is recognized. And the
Mother of Antique, although she's not
the former chief of police is recognized, Senator Ping Lacson.
This won't take long. Thank you, Mr. President. This won't take long since Senator Coco has taken up at least 3 main topics included in my interpellation, Mr. President. And thank you, Senator Pimentel, for that. I'd like to tackle the ALGU, Mr. President, if I may, just to wrap up the issue on insertions and lump sums. First, I'd like to quote again the ruling on, a portion of the ruling on Belica versus Executive Secretary pertaining to presidential pork barrel, a kind of lump sum discretionary fund which allows the President to determine the manner of its utilization. This refers only to the Malampaya funds and the Presidential Social Fund, Mr. President. However, be that as it may, we may be violating the same Supreme Court ruling if a similar utilization of funds is applied to another project, another type of project. Now, ALGU, under the NEP, page 581, the amount is 7 billion pesos, Mr. President. However, under House Bill number 8169, or the GAB, Volume 1-B, page 581, it ballooned to 16 billion 80 million 98,000 pesos. But in the Senate, meron din po nagdagdag 102 million pesos. No? I won't belabor anymore, but the basic question and the policy question should be, first, where is this lodge, Mr. President? Ma'am. Madam Sponsor, may tanong po ako.
I'm trying to reconcile
No, where is this lodge, first?
ALGU.
ALGU.
Where is lodged? Wait, we have different figures. I'm trying to look at the
No,
figures.
not the figures yet. My question first is, saan ba ito naka-lodge? Anong department, anong agency ng gobyerno?
It's a special, what is it? A special, it's DBM. Yes.
Because the second question may
It's,
be
let
related.
me answer, Mr. President. It's a Department of Budget and Management, but
Okay.
the monitoring and implementation.
So it is under the budget of the Department of Budget and Management?
Yes, but
Okay.
the strict
My-
monitoring and implementation
Yeah,
is a
I understand. My second question is, or follow-up question is,
Pati ba yung figures niya?
was DBM consulted when in the House it was increased to 16 billion 80 million 98,000 pesos?
Can
Was there
we
consultation?
reconcile our figures? Because my
My
figures are
reference is
different.
the budget books.
Ba't wala? Ba't sa atin iba?
Local government support fund.
That's different. This is ALGU.
No, ALGU has, 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Session suspended.
Pero yung dito sa breakdown.
Ready to resume, Mr. President?
Session is resumed.
Just to clarify, Mr. President, allocation to local government, ALGU, is comprised of many items, including the MMDA, the special shares of local government units in the proceeds of national taxes, the Barangay Officials Death Benefits Fund, the Local Government Support Fund, the LGSF, and the special shares of local government units in the proceeds of fire code fees. I believe that a good senator from Cavite, my vice chair, is referring to the LGSF, and under the LGSF, we have the assistance to municipalities, the assistance to cities, the conditional matching grant to provinces for road and bridge repair, the provision for potable water or salintubig, and other financial assistance to local government units.
Yes, I'm particularly referring to other financial assistance to LGUs.
Okay, so
That's
we're on the same page now.
paragraph 5, yeah.
Yes, Mr. President. So the other assistance to LGUs is part of the LGSF,
Yes.
which is part of the ALGU.
ALGU, yes.
Okay, very clear, Mr. President.
So under net, 7 billion po ito. Under the House version, naging 16 billion. So nag-increase siya ng how much? 9 billion pesos. Ang unang tanong ko, nakonsulta po ba yung ahensya, which is the DBM, when this ballooned, the amount 7 billion ballooned to 16 billion? Naikonsulta po ba ito sa DBM? Dahil DBM ka mo nakalad.
I don't think so, Mr. President.
Okay.
Because from the NEP to the increase in the GAB, I don't think Secretary Jokno was consulted
So again,
on the increases.
Mr. President, distinguished sponsor, would it not constitute grave abuse of discretion? Kasi naging,
Yeah. 7B to 16B
Yeah.
or 9B.
if DBM was not consulted, who will implement? So again, the legislators will be implementing.
Original na, the 7, may line. There's a menu. Local governments can request. Bawal yun. Bawal. Local governments, yes. Mr. President, in the practice of this fund under the LGSF, under the ALGU, the local governments, those perhaps that were byproducts of the consultations with the LDCs to the RDCs that were not part and parcel of the NEP can actually request to the DBM to be funded under this assistance to municipalities. But the augmentation of 9 was not consulted with the DBM, per DBM.
Di pareho rin yung problema, Mr. President. Hindi na-consult yung agency. So who will implement this? And how would DBM monitor something that they didn't know in the first place?
We have a circular po,
Oo.
and then there's a documentary report.
How this
Yes.
was,
Yes, Mr. President.
Barangay.
To be sure, this is not a lump sum where there's arbitrary or...
I will disagree with your
May I just...
statement. Anyway,
it's-
Mr. Please go
actually,
ahead.
No, let me just put on record because madugo ang kanilang requirements po. Number 1, only LGUs may request. No lawmaker may request. Number 2, their project menu is here. And the documentary requirements is tedious and bloody. Certification under oath from the LCE attesting that there is a sanggunian resolution endorsing the proposed project, that the same part of the duly approved local development investment program and annual investment program of the LGU, identification of the recipient government hospital and rural health center signed by the LCE and local health officer if this is falling under the indigent patients menu. Ambulance, certification under oath from the LCE attesting that there is a sanggunian resolution, again with a local development investment program, etc. And a project proposal, profile signed by the LCE and the local health officer, including the vehicle specifications, the deployment, the use, the cost, etc. Ambulance pa lang po yan. Assistance to indigent individuals, medical, burial, transport, food assistance, cash for work, educational assistance. Certification again with sanggunian resolution, local development plan, and project profile, type of assistance, period of implementation, implementation process. This is where the DILG comes in. for the strict monitoring and implementation only of LGUs, not of lawmakers. They are barred from requesting for this because, as it aptly says, it is a financial assistance to local government units. And just like we discussed yesterday, this must be vetted or requested from the LDC level, Mr. President. I think these are the needs which are not necessarily infrastructure in nature, but the needs of the indigent peoples in the rural communities,
Thank you, Mr.
but
President.
not lawmakers.
What you mentioned is the menu, but where are the items?
There's no.
If there are no items, then it follows that this is a lump sum appropriation. And worse, from 7 billion, which I suppose DBM or whatever agency was in charge of preparing, pinag-aralan nila ito. Pero pagdating sa lower house, dinagdagan ng 9 billion without even consulting the agency or agencies concerned. So how would that be implemented kung walang consultation with the executive? This is a back and forth discussion, Mr. President.
Yes.
I don't mind if we amend, we realign, as long as we consult, or it is upon the request of the agency or the agencies concerned. I will have no problem with that. I will have a problem if it's discretionary and arbitrary on the part of the legislators.
Mr. President, I am informed that it is not for legislators, it is for local government units, including purchase of mini dump trucks, fire trucks,
Multi-cab.
multi-cabs. Yes, Mr. President, and the repair of public markets and slaughterhouses. It's not the BUB, but it's similar because this ALGU was instituted during the Aquino administration, is that correct? It was expanded during the Aquino administration and continued under the present administration. It's similar to the BUB because these are the bottoms-up needs of the grassroots communities, not for legislators to identify post-enactment, but for LGUs to request their small needs which may not be part of the NEP na hindi po na-adopt, perhaps no RDC.
Well, it is just like saying that the farm-to-market roads are not for the legislator concerned because DA will implement. But DA was never consulted when the 500 million pesos worth of 69 farm-to-market roads in one district was, inputted in the House version of the budget bill. It's just that, pareho rin yun. In this case, by Secretary Jokno's own admission, walang consultation. So, at the proper time, I may introduce an amendment to just refer back to the 7 billion because I assume that meron pag-aaral na ginawa doon sa 7 billion because it's in the NEP. But for the House to increase it to 9 billion pesos,
Wala. The increase from NEP to GAB was not based on consultation with DBM at least. Whether there was consultation with local governments, that would be for the House to say. Malay mo kinonsulta nila. Bait ko sa congressman.
sana man lang may listahan tayo. Ano ba yung mga disadvantaged municipalities or barangays or provinces na mabibiyayaan ito? Baka hindi na rin ako kikibo. But there's none, Mr. President. It's just a menu. So this is arbitrary, this is discretionary.
Mr.
Pagdating
President,
niyan sa congressman,
disadvantaged municipality.
papagawa lang sila ng resolution, pamimigay na nila yan.
Assistance to municipalities, assistance to cities, and ano.
Yes. Mr. President, under the LGSF, there's the assistance to municipalities and assistance to cities, and clearly the assistance to municipalities is much bigger than the assistance to cities. So there's really a bias in favor of the underserved or the LGUs that need assistance more.
Meron. Iba to, ma'am.
Mag-return ko na lang kamo.
Meron na pala. Iba, meron.
Ito, Mr. President. There's a list of the assistance to municipalities for 2019 per town. Ito ho, ang kapal-kapal. Meron na, it's not a lump sum. It's actually, it's an annex here of every municipality
For the 16 billion, Your Honor.
for the 7.
For the 7, I have no problem. Pinag-aralan nila yan eh. But for the 16,
Masbate, Catanduanes, Sorsogon, Aklan, bakit walang antike? Teka.
Meron, ma'am. Hindi, ma'am. Assistance to municipal.
baka nandun sa 16 billion, Madam.
Hindi,
Yung
kung
antike.
papayag kayo po, tulungan na nyo talaga. Yung tatanggalin mo sa house, ilagay mo malaki doon. Tulungan doon. Pakita kita kung gaano kahirap ang tao. Maaawa ka, maglalagay ka doon ng malaking amendment. Oh, sige. Nakita ko tuloy. Ayan, maganda yan.
Is for the further discussion, Mr. President.
Bakit walang antike? Nakalimutan na naman. Aklan lang. Wala. Ano ba yung assistance in this fund? It's under LGSN. Yes. Pero yung tinatanong niya,
Let's move on, Mr. President. Let's leave this in the meantime. No, we'll proceed now to the 2019 budget itself, the historical data of appropriations and obligations. Yes. Ang source po natin dito yung SAOB, Statement of Appropriations, Allotments, Disbursements, and Balances. As of the end of quarter 3, 2018. Labang malaki-laking ano nito. Anyway, let's start with 2016 anyway, Mr. President. Total available appropriations 3.2 and then total obligations. Unused appropriations in 2016 was at 596 billion pesos. 2017, 388. 2018, as of end of third quarter, 1.4 trillion pesos. Kindly comment on this. Because in your sponsorship speech, meron pang portion doon na na-exceed yung underspending by 34 billion pesos. No? I remember that. But if you see the chart as shown, ang unobligated balances dito, 1.2 trillion as of third quarter. Unreleased appropriations, 256 billion. Unused appropriations, 1.4.
Mr. President, you're referring to my speech where I mentioned how much was the amount, 34 billion.
Exceeded underspending by 34.
Because that referred, and if you recall my speech, to the cash disbursement, Mr. President. So, in short, yun na po ang kanilang nabayaran, nalaan pong pondo sa ilalim po ng cash disbursement. But under the appropriation, the figure is,
The total available appropriations, 3.7.
as of December.
I know, ma'am. During 2018, ang total unobligated balance nila is ito.
There's a total, tama ba ito?
Unused
Of the
appropriation.
third quarter in 2018, there's a total unobligated balance of
1.2.
1.214.
1.4.
Yes.
Ito yung statement. The statement.
The statement in the speech, Mr. President, was referring to the disbursement. The statement that we've exceeded the spending program, that's why I use the word spending, refers to disbursement. That means payment of obligations entered into by the government, Mr. President.
Okay, Mr. President, we are referring to different base numbers. Anyway,
Hindi,
ang
iklaro ko
tanong
lang
na
po.
lang po is why is that? Why is there such a big unobligated balance
Hindi po,
of 1.2?
ganito po.
Sige.
Para po maliwanag.
Okay, explain lang po.
Okay. I'll simplify. Appropriations, as we know, is different from disbursements. You know that very well.
Yes.
Appropriations refers to the authority to enter into obligation
Yes.
granted by Congress, while disbursement refers to payment of obligations and disbursements program as prepared or determined by the executive. So for the past years, the NG's fiscal position has been in deficit. So naturally po, iba ang figure ng appropriation sa disbursement.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned in my speech that they've exceeded 34 billion, that's disbursement. But the appropriation is different. The
Miss-
total unobligated balance is 1.2, as shown in your slide.
But shouldn't we be using total appropriations or the appropriations as reference for efficiency? Because we appropriated this amount to the national government, and then ang nagagamit lamang certain portion of that appropriations. So doon natin dapat i-base yung unused appropriations consisting of unreleased and unobligated. Diba? Para makita natin yung efficiency, as pointed out by the minority leader yesterday, for purposes of planning, for the future national budget,
Yes.
makikita natin
Yes.
how much are we supposed to appropriate based on the efficiency of
Yes.
the agencies
Mr.
concerned.
President, that's the reason why we are transitioning to a cash-based 2019 budget. Because it's an obligation-based budget, there are payments that have to be made of the 2017, payments of this year. Hindi po magulo. Hindi yung tugmang 12 months na appropriation, na obligation, na disbursement. Maliwanag, pag cash-based, 12 months, ito ang appropriated, ito rin ang linaan, in-implement at babayaran. Kaya nga, iba-iba po yung figures because the 2018 appropriation is different from the unobligated balances and the payments made. Some of the payments made are from 2017. I was informed yesterday that some payments made are way back to 2015. 16, 17. That's why our figures will never be the same because it's an obligation-based budget. We are not limiting the appropriation to the disbursement and the programs implemented to be paid. That is the reason why the DBM now has been advocating for a cash-based budget so that it's also clear for legislators. We gave you this, you spend this, you implement this, otherwise you get fired. I know, you return to Treasury. Yeah. Anyway. So ganun.
Since you mentioned the cost-based budgeting, Mr. President, out of curiosity, may tanong lang po ako. Magka-cost-based tayo next year. Then why are we passing a joint resolution extending the authority to spend yung 2018 hanggang December 2019? Di ba magka-kontra yun?
Yes. Mr. President,
At least MOE and capital outlay.
yes, yes. Mr. President, because we are transitioning and the agencies, perhaps, wag naman magalit yung mga ahensya, may not be wholly disciplined yet to finish or to expedite the effective implementation, obligation, payment, disbursement of their budgets. And so it would be beneficial to the poor if there are remaining funds that cannot be spent for December 2018, that we allow its implementation till December on 2019. Huling hirit na, ha? Okay, pero next year, disiplina kayo, 12 months lang, ubusin nyo, may programa kayo, may nangangailangan, patupad ninyo, bayaran nyo, ganun.
In other words,
Transitioning po eh.
In other words, Mr. President, we're trying to render ineffective yung cost-based budgeting.
Hindi naman
I
po.
did not sign that resolution, by the way, Mr. President, for that reason. I don't want to be inconsistent.
Okay, hindi naman po. Because we are extending the life of an obligation-based budget, Mr. President. We're not extending the life of a cash-based budget yet. If we extend the 2019 cash-based budget, the life of which is only 12 months to 24 months, then we are being contradictory. But that will be for the next Chair of Finance. I will not stand here next year. Okay.
Okay, let's leave it at that, Mr. President. It's just an observation.
I'll just give an example, okay? With all due respect to the agency, DSWD, that has had maybe 4 heads. I asked them, Kalahi seeds. I said, I know that there's Kalahi seeds, etc., etc. To make a long story short, it's already December. They did not realize that there was an allocation of, let's say, 50 million for Region 6. I said, you know, so many people are asking for footbridges, for this and that. It's still in the central office. They did not even realize that there was an allocation and they will only do the ocular of the Kalahi areas now in December. Imagine if we don't extend the funds, sayang naman po na babalik sa treasury yung para sa Kalahi seeds na areas na hindi nila alam nandun may pondo. You'd be surprised. Another one, let's say, DFA. I go to a jurisdiction, let's say a consulate, a foreign consulate. I tell them, you know, we amended it, and we gave you extra MOE because you cover these countries and you're only 1 or 2 persons here, etc. They say, no, we don't know. They go home to Manila. They ask their admin and finance. They said, wala, wala. I have to ask LBRMO and my office to coordinate with the agency, to coordinate with the foreign post. It takes them 3 to 6 months to find that there is money, and then that's when they spend it. That is the same problem with AHA yesterday, with HFEP that we discussed yesterday, and many others. DOT was another problem. Some time ago, I went to a post and I said, you know, because I appreciate the work you do, I actually have an amendment of just a few millions for your MOE so you can promote tourism, etc. for this. They said, no ma'am, we checked with admin and finance, there's none. The officer had to go home and consult. Wala pa rin daw. Finally, inamin na meron. Dun pa lang itatransmit ang funds. So, Mr. President, ganun po minsan ang nangyayari. Wag naman magalit ang executive. So, kaya po nag-extend ng 12 months next year para pagbigyan sila. Pero next year, cash-based na. Nasanay kasi ng multi-year, 2, 3, 4 years, obligate. Kakulangan po ng disiplina, kaya ang bagal-bagal. Kaya nagtataka po ang mga taong bayan at mahihirap. Ang gaganda na sinasabi ng mga senador. Nararamdaman ba nila? Minsan hindi. Kasi yung ahensya, mabagal mag-download, mabagal mag-implement bago makarating at maramdaman ng mahihirap.
Tapos na po. Since you refuse to let go, tatanong lang tungkol doon, what is the opinion of the DBM Secretary on the joint resolution that we passed on third reading? Yung joint resolution extending the lifespan of the 2018 MOE and capital outlay under the 2018 budget up to December 31, 2019.
Mr. President, this is a congressional initiative to pass the joint resolution. And because we're politicians, we are in touch with the grassroots, with the provinces, the barangays, and we see how projects are not implemented. And therefore, and we also see that there could be unobligated balances na nakakahinayang naman pong hindi gamitin. And so, DBM understands the position, agrees with it, and in fact, is optimistic that next year we will have a cash-based budget if you help me pass especially the BRB.
Yeah, so DBM is agreeable.
Yes.
Okay, moving on, Mr. President. National debt. Ayan, yan po yung utang ng bawat Pilipino.
Kagalit sa akin.
As of October 2018, 70,974 per Filipino. Very quickly, do sa unused appropriations ng different departments. Let's just go through with this. Ito po yung honor roll.
Can I have a copy of that? What is this?
For example, why would DOTR have an obligation rate of just 38%? What are we going to do about this, Mr. President?
What is this?
What projects have suffered or are suffering
copy of that.
on account of
I cannot
this
see.
very low obligation rate of DOTR. DSWD, October 2018, end of third quarter. DSWD 58%, DILG 64, DND 48,
I'll have to answer you when the DOTR budget comes to the floor, Mr. President, but I recall, because I've been defending that budget for the past several years, that's a perennial problem, and I'm sure they will say that they will obligate up to 80 or 90% till end of December. I don't know if it's Filipino mentality na last minute, nagmamadali, or dahil po mahirap yung mga right-of-way issues on some big-ticket projects for infrastructure, or permitting with LGUs, or all of the above. I share your frustration, Mr. President, whether it's NHA, or HFEP of DOH, or DOTR, even in the previous administration.
Anyway, Mr.
During
President, I don't want
hearings,
to
we will talk
deny
about their low obligation rate.
our other colleagues from Interpolate their
So if
time.
you want to cut your budget and put it in your advocacies on those that will go, I will be happy to do that, because I don't want to see wastage.
Yeah. Moving on, Mr. President, macroeconomic indicators.
Ito God.
Real GDP growth. Eto, ang tanong ko, kailan tayo makakatsamba na on target? Well, 2017, medyo on target tayo, no? 6.575. Ang actual 6.7. But look at the others.
Okay.
And why is this, Mr. President? What accounts for
Can I have the
wrong
break-
projections,
breakdown of
even
the
far
growth
off
per sector? Do you have it?
from the actual?
I think it's
I just want to be educated, Mr. President.
agriculture. I don't have the figures and they're getting it, but top of my mind, it's clearly agriculture that brings down our growth.
So why?
I am
Mr. President?
certain. Negative.
No.
All sectors, in fact, even the services sector, it's top of mind, I know it. It's agriculture that's bringing down our growth.
Ang tanong ko, Mr. President, bakit yung projection natin laging mali doon sa actual? Ang layo?
No, 2017 is in between the projected
Yeah, that is
GDP
correct.
growth. And 2016 was not their administration, it was the previous government, Mr.
I would just like to
President.
be enlightened. Bakit
And then
laging-
2015 is the Aquino administration still. So they can only answer, Mr. President, for 2017, which is within the projected GDP growth.
No, I'm not particularly pertaining to an administration. This is a phenomenon that we
Mali ang-
should devote some time to study why.
It's not accurate.
Yeah.
What
Bakit
would be the
laging
reasons why it's-
malayo?
Mr. President, these are not projections, they're actually targets. And yes, I agree with you. When we target, we must make it realistic targets so that we don't fall short of our targets. So that when you
For
face
purposes of
Congress...
planning, yeah.
Yes, for purposes of planning. The NEDA says that these are targets, not projections. Maybe, why do we fall short of target? Because of if the factors beyond our control, such as the rise in prices of crude oil globally, then we should perhaps taper our targets. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. President. Fast track na tayo. Move forward. Doon tayo sa general provision. Compare lang natin yung NEP, GAB, and the Senate Committee report or Senate version. Especially doon sa validity period. NEP. After the end of validity period, any unreleased appropriations as well as unexpended or undisbursed funds shall revert to the unappropriated surplus of the general fund in accordance, etc., etc. This is fine, no? Tama lang. Under GAB, any unreleased as well as undisbursed funds at the end of the extended payment period shall revert fine. But in the Senate version or under our committee report, ang nakalagay dito, any unreleased and unobligated appropriations at the end of the fiscal year shall revert to the unappropriated surplus of the general fund. This is our version, but I'll be critical somewhat, Mr. President. Ang ibig sabihin nito, kailangan unreleased and unobligated. So, maski na-release, hindi na-obligate, hindi ito babalik sa general fund. That's the implication. Hindi, and ang ginamit po ninyo eh. Any unreleased and unobligated. So I would suggest that we use or we adopt the House version in this regard, Mr. President. Just to serve the purpose. Alisin na lang natin yung and. Kasi dalawa requirements eh. Gamitin na lang natin yung House version para mas dalawa requirements eh, unreleased and unobligated. So maski na-release, hindi na-obligate,
No.
hindi babalik.
No, the intention is the same. A comma makes a lot of a difference.
Okay. So
No,
anyway, as long
any-
as
yung hindi po na-release at hindi na-obligate, dalawa.
we understand each other.
Yes.
Ano, why ko? Ba't kailangan po kami end naman? Hindi ko understand yun.
No, unreleased and unobligated.
Sige na po, Mr. President, para hindi kayo masyado mapagod, I'll terminate my interpellation on general principles. Thank you.
Majority Leader.
So, ano muna? Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, next lined up to interpolate the general principles is the Honorable Senator Risa Hontiveros. May we recognize her, Mr. President.
Senator Ontiveros is recognized.
After her, we can take a break after Risa, and then we come back after food. After lunch. Yeah, you have a break. After this, we can take up smaller agencies. Yeah. Ralph, tapos na, di ba? So, kanya, para tapos na. Ito, back after Frank. Huh? After? Okay. I won't tell her right now because she'll be upset. All right? Yeah. No problem. All right. Ready? So, Mr. President, may we recognize once again Senator Risa Ontiveros to interpolate and Senator Legarda to sponsor.
Yes, please proceed.
Salamat, Mr. President. Mr. President, gusto kong i-follow up yung at least dalawang issue na lumabas na sa interpellation sa general principles. So far, una yung ano yung papel ng mga regional development councils sa pagtukoy at pag-aproba sa mga proyekto na binanggit ni Senator Ping, at saka yung usapin din ng implementation readiness ng mga proyekto na binanggit naman ni Senator Coco. Tapos iuugnay ko itong dalawa at kung pagbibigyan ako ni Madam Sponsor, ibabundle ko na doon yung iba pang mga tanong doon sa tatlong ahensya, yung DOF, yung NEDA at saka yung DBM. So, una po, Mr. President, tungkol sa RDC endorsed projects inventory as the long list of projects for GAB lump sums. I'm leading Madam Sponsor towards, with your indulgence, introducing an item in the general provisions. So, unang-una po, Mr. President, salamat sa inventory ng RDC endorsed projects na pinadala sa line agencies during the preparation of the President's budget proposal. Yung ating Senate Finance Committee has a copy of these. I understand, Mr. President, na yung iba dito tinanggap ng line agencies, in-endorso sa DBM, pero an overwhelming number daw were not. Is that correct, Madam Sponsor?
Yes.
Yes. Marami daw na hindi tinanggap. Oo naman. Kasi
Ito nga eh. I actually put it on record yesterday, and first I agree with you, and that's the reason I said that there's a program like the ALGU for those projects, Mr. President, which don't reach the RDC and don't reach the NEP. There are 1.2 trillion RDC endorsed projects, and only 52 billion are included in the NEP. So, malaki po.
Malaki nga po, Madam Chair. What is the nature and purpose of these RDC endorsed projects?
Well,
Bahagi po ba sila ng mga multi-year investment plans that would realize the objectives of the regional development plans?
No, these are not big ticket projects. These are actually, because these are based on barangay, municipal consultation. These are health facilities enhancement programs, FMRs in the upland barangays, salintubig, communal irrigation system, local bridges, water supply system. These are the needs of the barangays, which are brought to the attention of the municipalities and the RDCs, but unfortunately, not all of them. In fact, much of them are not included in the NEP. 1.2 trillion, 52 billion included only.
As you said earlier, as the good sponsor said earlier, Mr. President, maliit talaga yung proportion na naisama from what were originally coursed through the RDCs. At maliliit man sa tingin natin yung mga proyektong ito, o maliliit yung value nila monetarily, as the good sponsor noted, mahalagang mga programa ito. And if you multiply them by volume, the sheer number of the barangays and LGUs na dumulog sa RDC, medyo importante din. So, in other words, Mr. President, if these RDC-endorsed projects are not incorporated in the national budget, ano nang nangyayari? Wala na po ba? That must, if so, that must be frustrating for the members of the RDC.
I'm sure. Then that barangay will not be served with its needs. Then that's a reason why they populate the Senate. They come here with resolutions, baka sakaling maging amendments, and it's true. Some actually become our amendments. Your amendments are usually rural health centers, right? Hospitals. And bridges. I receive a lot of letters. And there's nothing wrong with them coming straight to the legislators because these are based on consultations in the barangay level.
In fairness, Mr. President, I would suppose na itong mga RDC-endorsed projects, minsan tightly aligned dun sa regional development plans, minsan not so much. Sometimes, essential talaga sila to achieve the most important outcomes of the Philippine Development Plan in that region. Minsan naman, parang nice to have lang. Tama po ba yon, Mr. President? That they may or may not be aligned not only to the RDC, to the regional development plans, pero sa buong PDP.
Yes, Mr. President.
And probably, Mr. President, with good sponsor, I hope that the process of the RDC continues to improve in the future. But what I find particularly interesting sa mga RDC-endorsed projects na to is that kahit papano, they are identified in the course of an institutionalized and transparent bottom-up process of identification. Certainly, there are PPP proposals, kasi kanina hinahambing ni Madam Sponsor yung big ticket at saka yung namang maliliit pero marami at mahalaga. So there are these PPP proposals. Meron din mga proyekto inspired by the leadership of the cabinet secretaries, the president. These are also legitimate pipelines for projects that find their way into the public investment program. Pero sa view ko lang, Mr. President, yung RDC-endorsed projects, itong RDC-endorsed projects, provide the most legitimate link of the national budget to priorities on the ground
I
and in
agree.
the regions.
In fact,
I'm glad. Thank you,
In fact,
Madam
November
Sponsor.
21, very recent, this year, that's a joint memorandum circular to all DBM and all the agencies and NEDA, et cetera, which aims to strengthen the vertical and horizontal linkage between investment programming and budgeting. It provides the procedure, the timetable for national government agencies to identify and prioritize the regional PAPs to be included in the agency PIPs, investment program, and subsequently in the agency budget proposals, taking into consideration all the outputs, and then providing the procedure and the timetable for the agency central office. They should also give feedback to the RDCs through the agency regional office on the priority PAPs. Nasama ba? Hindi. Dapat alam yon, no? And the reasons for non-inclusion. Maganda yan. Para hindi na lang, kawawa naman malalayong lugar, nag-submit ng konsultasyon, umabot na ng region, pagdating sa next year, wala pa rin yung aking tulay. Naglalakad pa rin kami sa ilog para makatawid. Dapat may dahilan at pinapaliwanag bakit at sinasabi yung timeline kailan pwedeng ibigay. At kung hindi nabigay, susulat siya sa kanyang congressman, sa kanyang paboritong senador, baka sakaling masama sa amendment. Ayan. So maganda to. I laud you. Sino ba nag-initiate ito? It's NEDA, DBM that initiated, and NEDA, this joint memorandum circular. Okay, I'll have this copy. This
Madam,
is very good.
Mr. President, makahingi sana po ako ng kopya ng
Oh, you can get
joint
this one.
memorandum circular na yan. And
You can
hearing
get
that from DBM and NEDA, I'm glad na
alam ko.
yung view na
Gumawa tayo
pinag-uusapan
ng
namin ni Madam
general provision.
Sponsor is shared by the
adapting that.
Development
Parang yung gist
Management
niya,
Group.
tapos
Madam Sponsor, the RDC endorsed projects, to appear to me, are also the product of deliberation among competing proposals. Tapos, yung bawat proponent ng mga proyektong ito, siya man ay local chief
So, to
executive,
summarize-
would need to secure the endorsement of the sanggunians and provincial boards. Tama po ba yon?
Ano sabi?
Bago niya ihain sa RDC.
Bago ihain sa RDC, mahaba from LDC, and then,
But these will be covered by ordinances or resolutions of the local legislatures.
yes, the sanggunian resolutions.
Thank you,
yes.
Mr. President. So in light of this, Madam Chair, I hope that we can share this list of RDC endorsed projects with the members of the Senate. And dito papunta na ako at the proper time ipopropose kong general provision. I'm thinking, kasi Mr. President, that this chamber could introduce an innovation whereby instead of approving lump sum budgets that would later on need to be specified through some other process, maaring not as transparent as yung pinag-uusapan namin ni Madam Sponsor kanina, a process of DBM, the Cabinet Secretaries, or the Office of the President, baka we could introduce an innovation taking a second look at these RDC-endorsed projects and actually identify a subset of these as the long list. Parang maging sub-menu siya yung long list from which the agencies with lump sum funds, halimbawa DPWH, shall choose from. Kung tatanggapin po ito, kung gagawin po natin ito, Mr. President, the DBM then, on its part, could work with the NEDA and using the PIPOL, the Public Investment Plan online system, DBM can issue SAROs and NCAs only to those projects na may pinakamataas na implementation readiness score. At dito naman bumabalik ako sa isang punto ni Senator Coco kahapon. So may I ask the good sponsor if I'm correct in my presumption na meron naman kasing truthful information dyan sa PIPO system na yan, which would indicate which bridges, health centers, school buildings, water systems, kalsada ang mas implementation ready kesa sa iba.
Yes, of course, all the projects have different levels of readiness,
Exactly.
Mr. President. And I guess those which they deem as priorities are included and those which are not. And there are, mahaba ito eh, there are criteria for implementation readiness.
Oh, salamat, Madam Sponsor, kasi yun yung second to the
included.
last question ko tungkol dito.
Yeah.
I was going to ask the good sponsor, Mr. President, for an enumeration of the characteristics of these RDC endorsed projects na maaring tumulong sa DBM, identify kung alin ang ready na maimplementa, alin yung maaring project title lang pero ni wala pang project profile.
Yes. Well, those with feasibility studies, with detailed engineering design, with procurement plans and project management, resettlement action, new right-of-way is important, operational plans for the agency sector roadmaps, network plans, permits and clearances, coordination with LGU implementers. All of these are elements of implementation readiness, Madam.
Salamat, Mr. President. So, therefore, at the proper time, I'd like to introduce an item in the general provisions that might operationalize this approach.
Yes.
Salamat,
They actually have a very
sponsor.
good booklet. Anong pangalan ng booklet?
Thank you, Mr.
Very
President.
good. Under the National Budget Memorandum, all your questions and more will be answered, Mr.
I
President.
hope so, Mr. President. Kung pagbibigyan po ako ng good sponsor, I'd like to move on to some additional questions. Una sa DOF, tapos sa NEDA, and finally sa DBM. So, unang-una po, para sa Department of Finance, tungkol po sa revenues mula sa Train 1 at saka mga safety nets doon. Good sponsor, will there be direct subsidies for the poor and near poor who cannot afford to borrow for housing?
Housing subsidy. Alam ko
Meron po kasi general statement sa Train 1 na tungkol sa disposition ng incremental revenues para sa financing niyang direct subsidies para sa housing sa poor at near poor.
The direct subsidy, Mr. President, is under the SWD, under the conditional cash transfer. But direct subsidy for housing, I don't believe it was in our law.
Actually, Madam Sponsor, Mr. President, nung nag-deliberation sa sa House of Representatives tungkol sa Train 1, yung mga miyembro po ng House, tiniyak po nila na malinaw yung intention na ito. So that is na when VAT exemptions previously enjoyed by housing developers are removed as a result of Train 1, na magkakaroon ng compensation to the sector. Could the DOF confirm na tama nga na-discuss ito sa mga miyembro ng Ways and Means Committee sa House?
We were thinking about it when we proposed the removal of the exemption. But it was not.
It would seem kasi, Mr. President, na talagang allude dito sa train
Yes,
law.
but the social mitigating measures under the law that we crafted only had the SWD under the unconditional cash transfer and the Pantawid Pasada and the PUV modernization. We did not put, the executive can only implement what we legislators put, and we did not put a subsidy for housing.
I see.
Wala. I have it here. The social mitigating measures does not include cash vouchers for housing.
That also.
Ah,
Meron po kasi nga
housing, okay.
Mr.
Housing is
President.
VAT exempted. Housing remains to be VAT exempted. And so, it was probably, maybe Senator Angara, Chair of the Ways and Means, can explain, because housing was exempted from VAT,
Hindi lang po
and
VAT
so we did not
exemption,
put
Mr.
a
President.
subsidy for housing.
Opo, I can recall yung
Sunny, how can you-
specific lines dito in the law shepherded by our Chair on Ways and Means. Item B, V, sa section ng social mitigation measures, andyan yung and V or 5, housing that prioritizes and directly benefits both the poor and near poor households. Yes, if the good, I seem to see the Chair of Ways and Means.
Mr.
calling.
President,
I seem lang.
to my knowledge, and I did not solely craft this law, and I am told by DOF that because the housing sector was VAT exempted, then we did not include a subsidy for housing.
I may return to this question later, Madam Chair, because I seem to clearly remember that with the cancellation of subsidies previously enjoyed by housing developers, meron pong ma-generate
Mr. President,
compensation to the sector.
if you are certain that there is a subsidy for housing, I would be happy to be enlightened. Maybe Senator Angara, Sunny, is there a subsidy for housing? I'm not sure, because all the agencies are here and they cannot show me a subsidy for housing.
With the indulgence of the two
Yes.
very beautiful and intelligent ladies on the floor, I recall that the DOF counter-proposed to the removal, conditioned on the removal of the VAT exemption of housing developers for low-cost units and subsidized house, or for housing. They would give subsidies in lieu of the exemption. But at the end of the day, I think the bicameral, if I recall correctly, stuck to the exemption for housing units 3 million and below. That is what I recall. Yeah, so there was very little change actually. So baka hindi na natuloy yung subsidies,
Yes.
because the subsidies were supposed to be in lieu of the VAT exemption.
So,
And the DOF was proposing to give subsidies not only to developers but also to the purchasers of the
thank you
homes.
for that, Senator Angara, Chairman of the Ways and Means. So there is no subsidy because we don't have, because housing VAT was exempted. And also, 30% of the funds included investments in housing that prioritized directly the poor and the near poor households. So meaning it promotes, prioritizes the proceeds of train. 30% should be prioritized for investments in the poor and near poor households' investment in housing, including health, targeted nutrition, education. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. President and Madam Sponsor. I'm guessing that Madam Sponsor was in fact reading from that item BV of the train law, which I also read again earlier, and which included in V or 5, housing. But I'll just see how I can pursue this point further. Doon na lang sa interpellation natin sa budgets ng mga key shelter agencies. So moving on to my next question, Mr. President, the peso cost of petroleum products has been and remains quite high as a result of the depreciated peso and high international price of petroleum products. But still, the economic managers have changed their minds and are about to proceed with the next round of excise taxes. Yung VAT revenues on various petroleum products have risen and have exceeded projected revenues for 2018. Mismong si DOF Undersecretary Carl Chua ay nagsabi noong isang October 24 hearing ng Senate Economic Affairs Committee na yung excess in VAT revenues are indeed substantial. So, Mr. President, may I know from the good sponsor, magkano po ba magkakaroon nitong buong 2018 ang VAT revenues on petroleum-related transactions relative sa DBCC projections for the GAA 2018? Yan, nakikita ko si Yusek.
VAT revenues?
I think the amount of 13 billion in excess VAT revenues was mentioned during the meeting. At baka nga para sa first 2 quarters pa lang yun ng 2018.
So, the whole year, no excess?
There's no excess in VAT revenues because of the decline in the price of crude oil prices.
So, Mr. President, anong nangyari dun sa sinabi ni Yusek Chua noong October 24 na the excess is indeed substantial?
That was when it was
Unless,
$80 per barrel. It's below 6, it's 50. We're breaking even now because of the decline in the price of the world oil prices. October was the height of 80.
Well,
Ano?
sige.
Tulog muna ako, tapos alas 3 na tayo mag-resume.
To my next question, Mr. President, yung legal basis ng DOF actions kaugnay ng disposition of publicly owned lands, including those presently occupied by informal settler families. So, medyo mababalik ako sa issue ng housing. So, informal settlers who have long occupied portions of the PNR rights of way are said to be restless because there's been a halt in the processing of land use proclamations by HUDCC, by HUDC, that would have allowed PNR to dispose of idle parcels, yung mga tinatawag nilang patay na riles o non-core properties, in favor of the informal settlers who wish to begin investing in permanent housing. So, did the DOF have anything to do with this? May instruction po ba sa PNR na tigilin na yung disposition of its idle assets? At pwede bang ipaliwanag ng DOF kung what were these instructions?
Who knows about that? Disposition of idle assets? Sexani? Disposition of idle assets of government?
Disposition of idle parcels nung PNR in favor of the informal settlers. Yung mga tinatawag na non-core properties o kaya patay na riles. Meron kasing mga naunang land use proclamations, dati pinoproseso ng HUDC. Ngayon mukhang sinuspend na yon.
Can we just submit? PNR.
Mr. President, these include the presidential proclamations during the previous Macapagal-Arroyo administration.
I will have to ask PNR because
Thank you, Madam.
we are dealing with the general principles in the agency, and I promise you, can you please have a definitive answer? So please restate your question so that PNR, when they come, will have a memo to you, Mr. President, on the parcels of land occupied by the informal settlers.
Yes, Mr. President, good sponsor. At hindi lang occupied nila, pero na-cover din ng mga presidential proclamations previously. Bukod po sa PNR, pwede po nating itanong ito sa HLURB. Kasi sabi po ng HLURB, among those that should be included in the inventory ay yung mga government-owned lands which have not been used for the purpose for which they have been reserved or set aside for the past 10 years from the passage of the UDHA. Meron pong EO 48, a series of 2001 issued by the former President Arroyo, Macapagal-Arroyo, instructing PNR to identify properties that it would no longer be needing. So yun na nga pong non-core properties. And in that EO, in-instruct yung mga agencies like HUDC, pati po DENR, good sponsor, to dispose of these for socialized housing. So at the proper time, pag finalo up namin ito ni Madam Sponsor sa budget ng mga key shelter agencies, itatanong ko rin if that EO 48 has been replaced by a new EO issued by the President. So to my last point on this question, Mr. President, yung HUDC pa rin, together with the LRA and the House and Senate Urban Development Committees, Urban Development and Housing Committees, have recently generated an inventory of more than 3,500 hectares of government-owned land just here in Metro Manila. At ang Senado, nabigyan na po tayo ng specific information tungkol sa mga parcels na to. Yung iba dito, dating naokupa ng mga informal settlers, pero kasunod ng pagpasa ng UDHA, these are supposed to be dedicated for socialized housing projects if found suitable for the purpose. Kaya, Mr. President, Madam Sponsor, are there new rules and workflows being processed, being prepared para yung subset nung 3,500 hectares ng government lands dito sa NCR ay ma-dispose in favor of socialized housing projects?
Sigurado ako puro squatter na yan, hindi yan ma-dispose. Sigurado ako yung mga esterong yan, nakatayo na dyan ng mga building. Ano ang gagawin ko? Ano sasabihin? During the agency deliberation on housing, may we answer that, please?
Certainly,
Yes. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr.
President, Madam Sponsor. And pagdating natin doon, i-follow up ko rin kung kahit tapos na nating talakayin yung DOF budget, tatanungin ko rin at that time na how the Department of Finance, whether by law or by recent presidential issuances, if they are a party to this process of conveying these in-city parcels for socialized and low-cost housing. Kung ang department o yung kanyang mga representatives sa mga GOCC boards ay nag-a-advise din na yung mga parcels na ito ma-dispose of as if hindi na sila dedicated sa socialized housing, but in favor of the highest bidder. So dito, Mr. President, good sponsor, nagbabanggit ako ng ilang mga issue o mga balita o palagay na kung bakit nagiging restless yung mga informal settlers sa mga parcels.
You know which department submitted to you the inventory of the 3,500 hectares, is it? Is it hectares?
Yes, Madam Sponsor.
Which agency? Was it
3,500.
HUDCC?
HUDC po, kasama ang
HUDC.
LRA, at saka yung Senate and House committees po natin on
Okay.
urban housing and development, urban development and housing.
And you want to know how government will use it?
I want to know, Madam Chair, kung meron na bang new rules and workflows
Okay.
o meron bang bagong instructions or issuances na binabawas yung sense of confidence
Yes,
ng mga
yes.
informal settlers na mapapasa kanila.
I would recommend, Mr. President, to make sure that this 3,500 hectares is accurate. Because I can see that a part of the 3,500 are occupied by informal settlers. Some syndicates might have generated their own titles. Iba dyan, titulado na, nabenta na, nalipat na sa ibang may-ari, may mga building na dyan, or meron ng ibang infrastructure. So I'm not sure if the 3,500 are actually clean with no settlers for in-city relocation.
Mr.
So
President,
perhaps it would be best to just ask these agencies that submitted it to your honor to identify which are really available and unoccupied, and which are occupied illegally, and which are occupied by government institutions as well, and built their own structures, because I am certain this 3.5 is not clean.
Mr. President, mas confident ako kesa kay good sponsor na clean itong entry nitong 3,500 hectares sa inventory na to. Kasi HUDCC mismo ang lead agency sa pag-generate ng inventory. And may mga detalye po yung bawat parcel. And we presume na HUDCC
Okay.
ay nag-exercise ng due diligence
But it would
dito.
be good also, maybe just to verify with them, are they sure there's not one single informal settler family in any of these 3,500? Because I can see this is Metro Manila. Any vacant square meter here na walang bantay, na government land, meron na dyan nakatira ngayon o nagtirik ng kanyang bahay o building o semento dyan, may tindahan na dyan, may mall na dyan, kung ano. Metro Manila to, every square meter is so valuable. So these agencies sometimes keep on giving us figures. They better give their comments, the location of these 3.5, in which city, and the status of each, I think. If I
As I
may
mentioned earlier,
suggest.
Mr. President, some of these parcels are settled by informal settlers. Pero again, given na HUDCC ang nag-captain itong proseso ng pagbuo ng inventory, I'm almost sure na tiniyak nila na walang mga sindikato lang dyan at lahat ng posibleng maging beneficiary o stakeholder sa 3,500 hectares na ito ay mga karapat-dapat ayon sa...
An example is Intramuros, beautiful Intramuros. Why can't we make Intramuros a major tourism site? Because the government-owned properties in Intramuros has informal settlers, and they have not decided whether to do an in-city or within Intramuros relocation or to move them out.
Offhand, Mr. President, hindi ko masabi, tingnan ko ulit yung inventory if there are any parcels in Intramuros. But suffice it to say for now na I am very confident dito sa HUDCC, HUDC-led inventory, and
Okay.
I will pursue the
In fact, yes,
the-
I
this
would also
discussion with the
suggest.
Madam
No, thank you.
Sponsor.
That's very interesting. I would even request the chair of the Housing Committee to ask the agency to break down this 3.5 into which city, one municipality, that's just Pateros, and to identify which are populated by informal settlers, how many, what kind of informal settlers, syndicates or actual living there, or subleasing it. Ibig sabihin, pag subleasing, may mga sindikato yun. and who are government agencies squatting on government land, that's also possible, and which of these 3-5 are actually available. And then recommendations on what to do, to relocate them elsewhere, and where is a recommendation outside or within Metro Manila to another land, and which they can dispose of for privatization, and which can be used for government institutions. So tatlo, for in-city, for sale, or for utilization, because that's an asset. That's a great asset.
I'm sure, Mr. President, madaling i-rearrange yung matrix para ilagay yung mga parcels na ito sa kani-kanyang mga syudad at saka municipality. So I will pursue this at the next proper time, Mr. President, pag
Be
interpolate
answered
KSA
during the housing
Yes.
budget
And of course,
deliberation.
Mr. President, yung
I-heads up natin yun.
level of confidence ko sa inventory na ito ay dahil pati yung ating Senate Committee on Urban Development and Housing worked with the HUD-C and the House Committee and the LRA in generating this inventory. So may mga matitibay na batayan po para i-follow up ng mga informal settlers ito. So to my last question for the DOF, Mr. President, tungkol sa transparency and accountability sa pagpili ng financing sources as modes and sources nga for flagship PPP projects. So the Chinese president has come and gone, but it remains unclear why China has to fund projects like South Rail and Kaliwa Dam. This, of course, has implications for the magnitude of the loans and of the interest payments na babayaran natin through the budget. So, Mr. President, maaari ko bang malaman what the formal decision rules DOF uses when it recommends a particular funder para sa isang major project under consideration? So, bakit Chinese institutions natin isosource ang funds generally more expensive than other available sources? At hindi lang ito mere JICA, China toss-up. Kasi Mr. President, I understand, for example, that certain projects like the Kaliwa Dam at saka yung long haul ng South Rail, meron naman silang private sector proponents who were ready to use their own capital para yung risk of financing the infrastructure ay hindi kailangang i-offset against yung balance sheet ng gobyerno.
Mr. President, of course, first, it must be a NEDA-approved project. Second, we must decide on which agency, institution, multilateral institution, which government can give us the best terms. Best terms would mean lowest interest rate, the best concessional rate, the length of time, the timeline of payments, and those who are willing to fund us, because they may have the best terms, but they're not interested in helping the Philippines. So all of that put together, and not to impose their consultants, and for us to proceed with our projects the way we planned it,
Actually, Mr.
and
President,
open to funding.
Yes, that's what
marami ngang mapag-uusapan vis-a-vis China, vis-a-vis other potential funders sa mga big-ticket items natin in terms of sinong nag-exact ng mas mataas na interest rate, sino ang hindi.
I think we discussed that in our hearing.
We did
Yes.
also, Madam, Mr. President, mga issues din ng sino nga ang nag-i-insist na contractor nila, hindi lang contractor, pero consultants nila. And also the issue, Mr. President, nung greater employment of domestic firms and workers kapag yung financing ay nanggagaling sa PPP proponents. These are some of the issues in mind, Mr. President, na patuloy ko ring i-follow up sa mga deliberations natin dito sa Senado,
Yes.
beyond the budget interpellation on the Kaliwa Dam, for example. Mr. President, kung papayagan po ni Madam Chair, at this noon hour, pwede ko pong ituloy yung mga tanong ko sa NEDA at saka sa DOF. I'm waiting the advice of the Madam Sponsor. May I continue or shall I?
How many hours yet, Mr. President?
I just have about, for the two other agencies, about a dozen and a half other questions.
Oh,
Yes, that's
a
why.
dozen and a half. Would you want us to submit a memo
Mr.
so
President,
that it can be more exhaustive? And then we will consider it read into the record.
Mr. President, kung ganun, I would rather makapag face-to-face na
Okay.
conversation sa Madam Sponsor at the next time that
No, we
she
can do
says.
it now.
Kasi, all right. Thank you, Madam Sponsor. So kung ganun, Mr. President, itutuloy ko po ba?
Just 1 minute suspension, Mr. President.
Mr. President, before we suspend, maybe recognized, with the permission, of course, of the Madam Sponsor and the interpolator, yeah, we would like to encourage our colleagues to ask questions already on the three departments, so that after which we do not have to call them individually again once again if they're already exhausted their questions and issues with these departments lengthily, Mr. President. So that way we can speed up the process of approving these budgets on the floor. So with the indulgence of the sponsor, if there are questions on these other three departments, at least for Senator Risa Ontiveros, that will be it, and it'll be the end. So may I just ask for 1 minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Ako na lang. I'll suspend the general. I'll take up the other budget, small budget. Thanks.
Session is resumed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'd like to suspend the discussion on the general principles till 1:30, Mr. President, to await two other colleagues of ours and to continue the deliberations of Senator Hontiveros and Ma'am Lauren. But for the meantime, Mr. President, I move that we call on the budget of the Anti-Money Laundering Council, Film Development Council of the Philippines, and Games and Amusements Board, Mr. President. I so move. All three.
Any objection? There being none, consideration is in order of the said offices. Senator Sani, yes, Majority Leader.
Yes, may we recognize Senator Sani Angara. I believe, Mr. President, there are no colleagues of ours who want to interpose any or to ask any questions. and interpose any objections to the budget. We move, Mr. President, to close.
But then again,
Yes, just to accommodate the request of the
Yes.
minority floor leader, may we recognize Senator Sonny Angara to discuss briefly their budgets.
Just to give us the
Thank
overview
you.
of the budget.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
President.
Sonny
Thank
Angara is
you,
recognized.
Majority Leader. Just for the record, the budget of the Anti-Money Laundering Council, proposed budget for fiscal year 2019 is 63,475,000. The others, okay. Film Development Council, the proposed budget is 129,078,000. And for the Games and Amusement Board, it is 138,585,000. Those are the budgets of the three agencies, Mr. President.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
President.
Majority Leader?
Yes, Mr. President. Mr. President, no member wishes to interpolate on the budgets of these agencies. I move that we, that the budgets
We can
of,
do it one by
one by one, yes, that the budget of the Anti-Money Laundering Council be
Be deemed
deemed submitted.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
Mr. President, I move that the budget of the Film Development Council of the Philippines be deemed submitted.
Any objection? There being none, motion is approved.
I move that the budget of the Games and Amusement Board be deemed submitted. I so move.
Any objection? There being none, amendment is, motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
Thank you, Mr. President. May I, with the permission of the Majority Leader, for the state universities and colleges, as you know, the presidents have traveled from outside the country, all over the country. So upon clearance with the Minority Leader, because no one has registered to interpolate, once we clear with the Minority Leader, may we request that we approve their budgets as well so they can go home to their respective provinces, once cleared, Mr. President.
Yes, once clear. So we can do that after the break?
Yes.
yes, yes.
Yes,
All right.
yes, Mr. President.
All right, so, Majority Leader?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, to allow our colleagues as well as members of the Secretariat and all the all the agencies to have their lunch, I move that we suspend session
Session.
till 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yes,
I so
that
move.
means that the budget, the GAB is still on the floor.
On the floor.
And
Yes,
we
Mr.
need
President.
not move to have it on the floor every time.
Yes, Mr. President.
All right, so this is just a suspension of the session until 1:30 this afternoon. Any objection? There being none, the session is suspended.